Well, here we are again on a Wednesday at Glen Cary Lutheran Church. Pastor Gary Guptill, and you are?
Pastor Kristina Hill. Good to see you all.
Good to see you. Let's shake from 6 feet. Just got tested, so I asked people to give as many words they can think of for no.
How many did you get?
I think we're about 15 to 20.
Nice.
So negatory on that. I put ixnay, which you know what that is? That's Pig Latin.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you ever learn to speak Pig Latin?
Yes, I did.
You did? Should we try this whole broadcast in Pig Latin?
Let's not.
Ixnay on the obj.
The moral of the story, you don't have COVID-19. That's just what we want to know.
No, I don't. I was feeling really icky, and somebody on staff said they had it really bad, so I got nervous. My wife's been down, so she's getting tested today, but if I don't have it, she doesn't have it. So we're into week 4, exploring the book of Job. And folks, let's get you caught up where we're at. Job begins with Satan and God in a chess match with each other, and Job is the pawn in this. Job is a wealthy aristocrat. He owns much, he has a lot, and the question is, if Job loses everything, will he still remain faithful to God? Which asks the questions, why are we faithful to God? Is it only because we get stuff? And so the question is, really underlying all of this, what is it that we put our faith in? Is it because we're getting stuff from God? What happens if you don't get stuff from God? And what happens if all things turn bad in your life? Do you turn away from God? Well, that's been building up here now, and finally we are near the end of the book. And this is like that show Law and Order, which is my favorite. Do you watch it?
I've never seen Law and Order. I like Criminal Minds, though. It's kind of the same, right?
My kids love SVU, and I just think that's just too ick. I hate that one. But Jack McCoy is the best. Anyway, so this is like an episode of Law and Order where we're finally at the end. We're in the courtroom, and everybody gets to make their summary about what's going on and what their final case is. We're at the section here in which Job now is making his final case before God and anybody in the jury who will listen to him. And he's been saying all along, this makes no sense what's happened to me because I'm an innocent man. So let me read for you his cry out to God. God, listen to me. Here's what's going on. If I have denied the desires of the poor or let the eyes of the widow grow weary, if I have kept my bread to myself, not sharing it with the fatherless, but from my youth I reared them as a father would, and from my birth I guided the widow. If I have seen anyone perishing for a lack of clothing or the needy without garments, and their hearts will not bless me for warming them with the fleece of my sheep, if I have raised my hand against the fatherless, knowing that I have influence in court, then let my arm fall from my shoulder, let it be broken off at the joint. Then he goes on to say this, if I have put my trust in gold or said to pure gold, you are my security. If I have rejoiced over my great wealth, the fortunes of my hands have gained. If I have regarded the sun in its radiance or the moon moving in splendor so that my heart was secretly enticed and my hand offered them a kiss of homage, then these also would be sins to be judged. And he goes on with these great questions about if I've done anything really bad. He's basically saying how much of an innocent man I am. If I have concealed my sin as people do by hiding my guilt in my heart because I so feared the crowd and so dreaded the contempt of the clans, then I kept silent and I would not go outside. And he goes on and on here with such beautiful poetry, saying to God, I'm an innocent man. And God responds to Job.
Then the Lord spoke to Job out of the storm. This is what Job has wanted all along, God to finally give some answer to his questions. God said, who is this that obscures my plans with words without knowledge? Brace yourself like a man, I will question you, and you shall answer me. Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? Tell me if you understand. Who marked off its dimensions? Surely you know. Who stretched a measuring line across it? On what were its footings set, or who laid its cornerstone, while the morning stars sang together, and all the angels shouted for joy? Who shut up the sea behind doors when it burst forth from the womb, when I made the clouds its garment and wrapped it in thick darkness, when I fixed limits for it and set its doors and bars in place, when I said, this far you may come and no farther, here is where the proud waves halt. Have you ever given orders to the morning, or shown the dawn its place, that it might take the earth by the edges and shake the wicked out of it? The earth takes shape like clay under a seal. Its features stand out like those of a garment. The wicked are denied their light, and the upraised arm is broken. God goes on to take Job on a tour of the whole creation.
It's beautiful.
He shares stories about animals. I'll just read a couple real quick. Do you know when the mountain goats give birth? Do you watch when the doe bears her fawn? Will the wild ox consent to serve you? Can you trust it to haul your grain and bring it to your threshing floor? Do you give the horse its strength and clothe its neck with a flowing mane? Do you make it leap like a locust, striking terror with its proud snorting? God goes through all of this for several chapters just to show Job how wild the creation is.
Yeah, and you really need to sit and read them all. Spend some time in this, because when you get done, you can just see Job with each sentence shrinking. Nope, I don't know how to do any of that. I didn't create this. And then finally, right after God gets done with all of this, then Job responds back to God, and he does his best. Who are the two guys who made the movie? I'm not worthy, I'm not worthy.
Oh, I don't know.
It'll come to me. Job says, I am unworthy. How can I reply to you? I put my hand over my mouth. I spoke once, but I have no answer. Twice, but I will say no more. This is great literature. This is absolutely fabulous stuff, because as soon as we as humans think we've got it figured out, that all formulas should lead to an answer, that all righteousness should be rewarded, in the end, bad things can happen to good people. And even the concept of a person saying, I'm good, God is saying, you got no idea what you're talking about. Did you put anything into motion? No. There's a vast difference here between the human identity and the creator of the cosmos. And when we start to do this, and even in our own pride, think that we are God or should be able to control God, Job comes in and says, not on my time.
Yeah, I love how snarky God seems to be at the beginning. Like, he's just like, well, do you have an answer? You seem to know everything, right? Like, tell me, I'm going to question you. You give me the answers.
Yeah, he says, brace yourself like a man, like if you're God speaking to me. Oh, hold on, you're going to get it here. So,
I think it just goes to show how limited we are as humans. Obviously, we have power, we have some things within our control, but what is it they say that only about 10% of your life is within your own control?
I think that's right. And, we in this country, for example, place so much emphasis on the freedom of the will. Mm-hmm. That if it's going to be, it's up to me. And a friend who's tried to sell Amway years ago, and he used to come home with all these sayings. He'd put pictures on the refrigerator of things that he could have changed. And if it's going to happen, he looks back at that now and says, wow, I swallowed a bunch of nonsense. And sure, there is some place where we have some voice, but in the end, we're not in control.
Well, and I also think that even though it kind of knocks us down a few pegs, it also is kind of comforting, because it reminds us that God is so much bigger than we are, and even the things that we can't do. Like, I, as an individual person, can't solve world hunger tomorrow. I can't save everybody. But it's a reminder that God's much more powerful than me, and that's a good thing. It's something we're grateful for.
This story of Job, you could summarize this way, it's a call for humans to get out of themselves.
Yes.
That most arguments that we have with other people, most conflict, most whatever, when you break it down, it's the inability for yourself. So when Jesus in the gospel tells them, one man who's really rich and comes up to him and says, very similar to this, he asks Jesus, how can I inherit eternal life? And Jesus asks him, what have you been taught? Obey all the commandments. And the guy says, well, I've done all of them since my youth, a reflection of Job. And then Jesus says to him, which this is probably the gospel I should read for Sunday, the text says Jesus loved the man and then told him, go sell everything you have and give it to the poor. I'm wondering how much of a connection that story is right out of the story of Job. And Jesus says to the man, get outside of yourself. Things could happen to you. Wealthy people die early for no reason in a car accident, and poor people may have a successful, meaningful life filled with integrity and purpose. And sorry, there is no formula that's going to make you foolproof.
Well, and it brings us to the end of ourselves, right? It pushes us to our very limit. Even Job's account, Job in this story hypothetically is an innocent man, but the more you read Scripture, the more you realize we're really not that innocent.
No, one of the other things about the book of Job that is really interesting is the things he lays on the table for his righteousness is not personal piety stuff. It's not, I said 10 Hail Marys today and I showed up for church for 2 hours and I served on this board and did things. He goes after issues of righteousness connected to social justice, connected to people who are poor. I've done this. It says early on here, I've had servants, both male and female, and none of them have ever had a grievance against me for what I paid for them. According to this, ethics here is in Job that I've paid men and women equally what they're worth. And he goes on to not just that, greed, my desire for wealth, has not driven my heart and soul and been the deciding factor in this. Maybe it's a reflection of pure Old Testament ethical theology that when Micah says, what does the Lord require? Justice, kindness, humility. Mm-hmm. These are the hallmarks of Old Testament ethical monotheism that then plays into the New Testament. This is the stuff Jesus is concerned about too.
Yes, but the moral of the story is that all of those things didn't protect Job from suffering. That because creation is wild, suffering sometimes just happens. Like you get a bad, what is it you always say?
I don't know.
You get a bad hand of cards, it's just...
Got dealt a bad hand.
Yes, it's just like random, right? Sometimes it's random.
Yeah, that's true. I've used that kind of conversation with people who are in their 50s and they get cancer, mm-hmm. and their temptation might be to say, what did I do? What happened this? And the only answer is, seriously, you got dealt a bad hand. I mean, there's some things, smoke 7 packs a day, there's more likely you're going to put yourself in that high-risk category. But say a little bit about how much this means to you, this part of Job and creation, and your love for theology dealing with the restoration of creation.
I think it's hard not to compare this section to the creation story in Genesis. And it starts even talking about the earth's foundation, talking about separating the sea from the land. And I just see the parallels are so clear to me that God cares so deeply for creation. That God cares about the wild donkey and the ostrich and horses and the seas and all of these things that God names here in this speech. And God talks about how carefully he created these things and formed them to be a certain way. And to me, I think just what follows is that we need to be part of caring for this creation God has made. That God doesn't want the seas going and getting trashed if, God cares so much for it. And I definitely hear some ethical implications coming out of this speech.
You clearly hear intimacy from God about creation. You see him just thriving the doe. Did you watch when the doe bears her fawn? What an amazing image that God sat and watched the birthing of a small animal. And it's all through there, just the beauty of it all. So if you can connect that with a Boundary Waters trip, or some place in which you are sitting in creation, it's all there before you. There's a loon hollering out at you. Hi, I'm out here. Two things happen. One is you become co-creators. You see that purpose, and then you recognize how insignificant you are. So when a mosquito comes and lands on your hand and you swat it, we are, to God, in God's eyes, as minuscule as the mosquito is. We're just one small creature in the whole context of everything, even though we want to think we are God running it all.
When I think about all those documentaries they show at the IMAX, of the deep sea, they go down in the sea and there's these creatures we've never even heard of or seen, and we haven't even we haven't measured all the depths of the sea. So who knows what's down there? You know what I mean? Later in the speech, God talks about Leviathan, a giant sea monster that is like God's little pet that he delights in. Kind of like a rubber duck or a puppy on a leash. He kind of talks about that. And it's so God delights in this giant sea monster that would destroy us immediately, if it came up and ate us or something. I just think that there's so much that we don't know. And I think that's what God is drawing us to, that creation is so vast. And we should just be in awe and in wonder and be filled with curiosity for what God has done.
My cousin Martha Rosenquist put a post on Facebook the other day, and it was a humorous thing in which she said, here are 10 bird species that I absolutely don't like. And you couldn't help but read it and just laugh. My wife was reading it the other day. She was laughing so hard she was crying. Here were these birds that I had never seen, never heard of, and they all absolutely, in fact, I may have to go find it and post it on Facebook on the Glen Cary thing, because you can't look at this and say, oh my God, who made that thing? Some of these birds, it's just incredible. Look like humans dressed up to go out for the evening, or look like somebody took a wig. And anyway, I'm going to go have fun and post that. Anything else with Job you want us to know?
No, we only got 1 week left, so...
We do, and you're gone on Sunday, but we'll see all of the rest of you Sunday morning at Glen Cary, 9:30 for worship. And we aren't drinking coffee today. You've got tea, and I'm drinking Guppy's Gold maple syrup because I needed a big blast of maple syrup.
But while Kim is selling syrup, she's also selling tea and coffee and chocolate.
Oh, she is.
Yeah, so it's really a good Sunday to bring some cash and get some treats.
Yeah, we help the people of Malawi, even in the midst of our own pandemic. This is important. It really we don't stop doing the mission work that we've been doing for the last 50 years in this church, trying to help the people of Malawi out. Who knows in their poverty conditions before this hit, what they're facing now too. If people have wealth and have lost some of it, people who have had very little wealth, they lose 10% of nothing. You've still got almost nothing. So anyway, we're doing what we can. Those wonderful people of Malawi. Are you going to go to Malawi with us next time? How about when your kids get a little older?
Sounds fun.
It'll change your life.
Sounds like we can see some creation out there. Go on a safari.
Yeah, it's there is one place where they take you kind of consistently, and yes, there are hippos and gators, and it's kind of cool. So.
Or I'd be too scared that I'd get eaten.
They put you in a boat and you get strapped in, and you're doing just
This is
fine.
like Jurassic Park, except for it's real.
Yeah, well, no. All right. So again, we'll see you on Sunday. It's good to be with you again today. God's blessings to you all.